saddle up.
Hello, welcome to Saddle Up. This is Benner, and it's a brand new day that the Lord has made. So glad that you're along. And we're going to continue in the book of Luke. We're talking about these Pharisees, these scribes. Man, these people don't give up. You know, they're ticked off about something all the time with Jesus, and I'm sure they're getting pretty frustrated because they keep looking around and Jesus is just basically doing things that shows that they truly are not in control. And they thought they were. They believed they were the religious authority, the religious establishment, and they didn't count on God coming to be one of them, to be in the flesh and right in front of them, to the point where they couldn't even recognize that he was, because he flew in the face of their desire to be in control, to be the authority, to tell people what to do, and to be patted on the back and bowed down to and given everything that they wanted because they were the superior ones. At least they thought they were, and they've been able to get away with that because they oppressed people. They put burdens on people they weren't willing to lift one finger to remove. They took the law of Moses. They sat in the seat of Moses. They added to it. They made rules to tell you how you're supposed to do it, and it just became such a mess, and to the point where all they saw was a rule book, and they couldn't see Jesus. And that's where we are when we pick up here in Luke chapter 6 and in verse 1. Listen to this. Now it happened on the second Sabbath after the first that he went through the grain fields, and his disciples plucked the heads of grain and ate them, rubbing them in their hands. This was a Sabbath, okay? This is where the Pharisees have a real problem. Pharisees always have a problem with anything you do concerning legalism. It doesn't fit their rules, and they just don't really like it. These old boys didn't like it either. And verse 2, and some of the Pharisees said to them, why are you doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath? Well, they said it was not lawful for the disciples of Jesus to go grab something to eat out of the field. They picked it off, and they shelled the grain out in their hands, and they ate it. And essentially, what they were accusing them was of harvesting grain on the Sabbath. They were just getting something to eat. So you would think Jesus would tell them that, right? When they talked to him, they asked these questions, you would think he would say, no, technically they're not harvesting. But he doesn't do that. Listen to what happens here. He says, but Jesus answering them said, have you not even read this, what David did when he was hungry, he and those who were with him? How he went into the house of God, took and ate the showbread, and also gave some to those who were with him, which is not lawful for any but the priests to eat. So here is a law. Here is a law that is on the books. It's one that God gave to Moses to give to them that would lead them to Christ. It was one that was given as a sentence or a verdict because they didn't hear him. And this is one they should be paying attention to. And he's going to make an example out of this so that they understand who the authority truly is. So he says that David took bread that was not lawful according to the Torah, according to the law of Moses, for him to eat, and he gave it to those fighting men who were with him that were hungry, and it was not lawful for them to eat as well. And then he says in verse 5, he said to them, the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath. Now, that's got to fly hard in their face because they ask the question in verse 2, why are you doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath? So here comes the Sabbath police, and they've come in, and they're saying, hey, it's against the law. They were trying to get people to adhere to their rule and their authority, and they were missing the Lord of the Sabbath. They were missing Jesus Christ, God among them, Emmanuel, God with us. They were missing him completely. They didn't quit here. It says, now it happened in verse 6, on another Sabbath also, that he entered the synagogue and taught. And a man was there whose right hand was withered. So the scribes and Pharisees watched him closely, whether he would heal on the Sabbath, that they might find an accusation against him. If he makes a man well here, they're looking to see if he does a miracle that can only come from God. He does a miracle to make a man well. They're ready to pounce and say, see, you broke the law. And they're looking at it and trying to find a reason to arrest him and have him put in jail or killed. Well, their goal was to kill him. We know that very clearly because they ended up doing it. And so it says in verse 8, but he, Jesus, knew their thoughts and said to the man who had the withered hand, arise and stand here. And he arose and stood. Then Jesus said to him, I will ask you one thing. Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy? They were willing to allow a life to be lost in order to keep their Sabbath, to keep their rules, to keep them into the position of authority. They were willing that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, would die so that they can maintain their authority. In verse 10, and when he had looked around at them, he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And he did so, and his hand was restored as whole as the other. But they were filled with rage and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus. They were looking for a reason to kill him, and they would end up finding a way to do that. If you continue reading, and we may touch on that at some point on Saddle Up, but they did that very thing. They ended up having him arrested, and they chose to have a criminal, a killer, set free, that Jesus might be crucified. And so here is the bottom line, though. When he says he's the Lord of Sabbath, what he's talking about, and he's equating what they did with what David did, and David did something that was absolutely in violation of the law of Moses. What David did was a violation of the law of Moses, and if you violated that, the only remedy is to come clean to the Sanhedrin and whatever punishment of that might be meted out. And we know that in Numbers, I believe, chapter 16, God had them at that one time to stone a man who had violated the Sabbath. But this is something different. He is looking at the heart. And because he looked at the heart, it said what David did when he was hungry, he went into the house and took the showbread and ate it and gave to his friends. In another place, he says that he was blameless. He also says that the priests themselves violate the Sabbath every Sabbath day in their sacrificing. It's a hard job to kill that many rams and lambs and sheep and goats and to butcher all of them and to do everything that's involved with burning a burnt offering and those kinds of things. It's work, and they violated the Sabbath. They profaned the Sabbath when they did that. But he says they're blameless. You know, another place they ask him about divorce, and they say, well, Moses said we could divorce our wives for anything. And he says, Moses allowed you to divorce because of the hardness of your heart. Get the key word, allowed. Moses allowed you to divorce because of the hardness of your hearts, but from the beginning, it was not so. From the beginning, God said that man and woman would be joined together and become one, and that man should not separate that, not put it asunder. It is a oneness, and that oneness through the union of a man and a woman. They become one. And it's not that we should divorce, because if we have a hard heart, we'll find a reason when our wife, our husband makes us angry and we don't like what they did. We're going to find a reason to be able to get rid of them because we don't like it. But Jesus said it was never supposed to be that way. We're not supposed to be hard-hearted. How do you not have a hard heart? You don't have a hard heart when you decide that you're going to let the Lord Jesus Christ rule you, that you're born again and the Spirit is bearing fruit in you, the fruit of love, patience, gentleness, kindness, long-suffering. Against such, there is no law. There's no law against it, brothers and sisters. Don't give it 1 inch. Let the Spirit lead you. Quit looking at rules. It won't work. This is Banner. Until next time, saddle up.